Okay, so I'm happy to introduce today's speaker, which is Antoine Gégaud, and he will be talking about multiplicative chaos of the Brownian loop soup.
Okay, so thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to speak here today. And I will talk about a joint work with Elie Heidekon, Nathaniel Brestiki, and Titus Lepus. So this work is mainly about the link between two objects. The first one is Brownian loop soup, and the other one is Liouville measure. So I will start by introducing these two objects, and then I will move on to really the link between the two. So Liouville measure is defined as the exponential of the Gaussian free field. And so, okay, so here's a simulation, if you want, of the Gaussian free field. This is this can be seen as being the natural analog of Brownian bridge, where the time is two-dimensional, and it's a universal object that appears in many different settings. For instance, as the limit of the height function in diamond models, or as also as the limit of the characteristic polynomial of very large random matrices. So the way this is defined goes as follows. So here we have a domain D in the plane, and we look at the green function, which is defined as integrating the heat kernel with respect to time. And then the GFF is just defined as being a centered Gaussian process indexed by the points of our domain with covariance given by the green function. So the green function in 2 dimensions, the green function blows up logarithmically on the diagonal. And so because of that, the variance of the GFF at a given point blows up. And so, of course, this implies that we cannot make sense of this object pointwise, but instead it is a random generalized function. So Liouville measure informally is defined as the exponential of gamma times the GFF. And so here gamma is a parameter between -2 and 2. And so this is an instance of what's called Gaussian multiplicative chaos measure, where we exponentiate any Gaussian log correlated field. And so this Gaussian multiplicative chaos measures appears in many different places in mathematics in general. For instance, it appears in combinatorics with the Riemann zeta function, in random matrices, finance. As I will argue a bit later, this is closely related to planar Brownian motion. But Liouville measure is actually quite special because it is a special instance of GMC, because it can be seen as being the volume form of a surface chosen uniformly at random. Okay, so here is 3 simulations of Liouville measure. So what we can see here is the density of the measure with respect to Lebesgue measure. So this density does not exist, but if it did, it would look like that. And we have, so here we can see the density for 3 different values of gamma, and we see that the closer gamma is to 2, the rougher the measure becomes. So the problem, okay, so the informal definition of Liouville measure was this one, so the exponential of gamma times the GFF. But of course, since the GFF is not defined pointwise, we need to work a bit in order to make sense of this object. And this has been the purpose of many articles in the past two decades. The standard way to do this is to regularize the GFF. So at the level epsilon, we define H epsilon to be such a smooth approximation. For instance, we could do this via convolution approximations. Then we defined then we can define the exponential of gamma times this approximation. This is a well-defined object. We add this normalizing constant in front of it, epsilon to the gamma squared over 2. And then it turns out that this measure has a limit as the regularization goes away. So as epsilon goes to 0. And the limiting object is really what we think as being the exponential of the field. And so, of course, this is really important that the limiting object does not depend on the way we regularize the field. And so the output of this theorem, if you want, is that we obtain a random measure that is supported on points that are called thick in the literature. And so these points are points where the field is unusually large. So for a fixed deterministic point, the field H epsilon will be of order square root log epsilon. But if we sample our point according to our measure mu gamma, then the field is much larger at this point and will behave like gamma times log 1 of epsilon. This will be important for us in the remaining of this talk. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about Liouville measure. And the other character of this story is Brownian loop soup. So Brownian loop soup is an infinite collection of Brownian-like trajectories, Brownian-like loops. And it is distributed as a Poisson point process with intensity given by theta times a loop measure. And so here theta is a positive intensity parameter. And this, okay, so this object was introduced by Lawler and Turner, and is related to many other conformal, random conformal objects, such as CLE, SLE, and the GFF, as I will argue. So, okay, so here we can see a simulation of, on the right-hand side of Brownian loop soup, but really what, I mean, the picture that we should have in mind is that we have a domain, and then we throw many Brownian-like loops in this domain. Now I want to explain that this intensity parameter theta, when it is equal to 1/2, there is really something special that's happening. And the first way to see this is by looking at the clusters of loops. And so here, I think of a cluster of loops as being just a chain of intersecting loops. So for instance, on this picture here, I kind of drew 3 clusters. So we have one in red, one in purple, and one in green. And the green one, for instance, is surrounded by another cluster. And so there is a phase transition. As gamma increases, we go from a phase where we have infinitely many clusters to a phase where we have only one large cluster. And so from this point of view, theta equals 1/2 is really like a critical point. Another way to see this is that when theta equals 1/2, there is something else which is happening, and it's where we have the connection with the GFF. So if I denote Lx so for each given point of my domain, I will denote Lx if you want the total amount of time spent by the loop soup at this point. So this is a bit an informal notation. It doesn't make literal sense, but at least this doesn't make sense pointwise. But so let's call Lx the occupation field of the Brownian loop soup. And Legendre isomorphisms tells us that when theta equals 1/2, this occupation field has the same distribution as 1/2 of the Gaussian free field square. So that's what's written here. So the type of questions that we want to understand in our work is the following. So let's say that I couple my Brownian loop soup together with my GFF so that the occupation field of my loop soup agree with 1/2 of the GFF squared. And let me sample a point according to Liouville measure. What does the loop soup look like near such a point? So we saw that near this point, the GFF is atypically large. So via this isomorphism, it means that the local time is atypically large as well. So how does the loop soup create such a thick local time? Does it come from a few very thick loops, or is it the other extreme? Is it because we have many loops, but each loop having a fairly typical local time? And also, this is specific to the case theta equals a half, but what can we say when theta is not equal to half? So to rephrase these questions, we would need to first make sense of the correct associated chaos. So what would be the associated multiplicative chaos when the intensity parameter theta is not equal to half? So that's so the aim of this talk is really to answer these three questions. Okay, so I will start by presenting what I called Brownian multiplicative chaos, and we'll see that this will really encapsulate the contribution of one loop to a Liouville measure. So the setting is the following. Instead of having loops, now we'll have a Brownian path that is stopped at the boundary of a domain. It's really in the end, it will be the same thing. It's just that we change slightly the setting, and we have a starting point x naught in the middle of the domain. And so the goal here is to build a measure that is supported on thick points of our path. And so via this Legendre isomorphism, we saw that thick in this setting means that we want to have a very high local time. And so we want a measure that is supported on points that have been visited unusually often. And so this has first been done in this paper by Bas, Birdsey, and Khoshnevisan in 1994. But this paper was restricted to a limited range of the parameter gamma, and it required the gamma to be smaller than 1. And so in these two later articles, so one by Aidekon Yuanxi and another one by myself, we simultaneously gave the construction for the whole range of parameters, so the whole subcritical region. So now I'm going to explain you my approach to this problem. So let me again denote Lx, the local time of x. Okay, so here I will start this. The first half of the slide will be a bit informal. It will be a kind of heuristics, and then the second half will make sense mathematically. So Lx does not make sense point-wise, because if I fix a point x, then the path will just avoid it almost surely. But it makes sense if you want as a generalized function as well. So the goal is to build a measure where Lx is atypically large. And so via these isomorphism theorems, so I already presented one, which was Legendre isomorphism, but there are many others. We can think of the square root of Lx as being a log correlative field. So non-Gaussian, but kind of logarithmically correlated. And so in order to build such a measure, it's natural to try to make sense of the exponential of gamma times the square root of the local time. And so this is exactly what we are going to do. So to do that, we regularize the local time, and we look at the local time of a small circle. So here it's not the disk, it's the local time of a small circle. And we defined an approximation of the measure. So we exponentiate gamma times the square root of the local time. We have a normalizing constant in front of it. So there is this epsilon to the gamma squared over 2, which is exactly the same one as in the Gaussian setting. What's more interesting is that we have a different constant with this square root of log 1 over epsilon. And so this is really because we are in a non-Gaussian setting. So So the normalizing constant is slightly different. And so the theorem tells us that for any gamma smaller than 2, this measure converges as epsilon goes to 0 to a non-degenerate random measure. And so the output of this theorem is, if you want, a multiplicative chaos for a non-Gaussian low-correlated field. Is there any questions about this result, or is it okay? Okay, so here I have a simulation of this measure. So here the underlying domain is a square. The starting point of the path is the center of the square, and in blue we can see the underlying Brownian motion. And so we see that we have a measure that is really supported on this Brownian path.
I have one question.
Yes.
Yeah. So I remember that in this also. So is there any reason that this gamma is between 0 and 2 rather than some other value? So I remember that in one of your slides, when you relate this square root of local time and Gaussian field, there are some other multiplicative constants. So
yeah, okay. So you are concerned. Okay, so you are concerned by the fact that I haven't written a square root of 2 times the local time, for instance.
Yeah, probably, yeah. So it just
okay. Okay, so here I just okay, so here I just changed slightly the constant, I guess, and okay, and I should have written. Yeah, I should have written a square root of 2 times the local time everywhere.
Okay, I see. Okay, thanks.
Because then gamma between 0 and 2 is really the whole subcritical region.
Okay.
And in particular, you see that you have the gamma squared over 2 here.
Okay, so just normalize your local time to be having that.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. Okay, now I just want to explain a bit what this Brownian motion looks like viewed from a typical thick point. So here I take a point X, and if you want, I'm conditioning my path on the fact that my point has been sampled according to my measure M gamma. Then this path will be decomposed into three different, three independent pieces. So the first one in blue, the second one in red, and the last one in green. So the first path in blue is nothing else but a Brownian path starting from X0, conditioning and conditioned to visit the point X before exiting the domain. The last part is just a Brownian path which starts at X and which is killed at the boundary of the domain. And the middle part is a bit more interesting because the middle part is a path that starts at X and ends at X as well. And this has the law of the concatenation of infinitely many excursions from X to X. And these excursions are distributed according to Poisson point process, where the intensity is given by some excursion measure times A, where A is related to the parameter gamma by this A is equal to gamma squared root. And so here we see that the larger gamma, the more excursions that we have, and really the thicker the point. Okay. And here on this slide, I have tried to compare a bit this Brownian multiplicative chaos measure and this more standard Liouville measure. And what I want to argue is that these two share striking similarities, but at the same time they are far from being equal. So indeed, okay, so we see here that their expectation have similar flavors. There is this conformal radius to the power gamma squared over 2. in the Brownian setting, there is an extra green function appearing. Both measures are conformally covariant, and the formula that expresses this is really the same in both cases. Their carrying dimension is the same, is equal to 2 minus gamma squared over 2. But again, they cannot be equal because one is supported on the Brownian trajectory, whereas the other one releases the whole domain. And the consequence of our work with Elie, Nathanael, and Titus is really a concrete link between these two objects. And this is what I want to explain now. So I'm going to talk about so multiplicative chaos of the Brownian loops. So again, we have this Brownian loop soup. So now I'm going to denote it by L theta. So L theta is again just an infinite collection of loops, which is distributed as a Poisson point process with intensity theta times loop measure. And I want to recall you this Legendre isomorphism that the occupation field of the loop soup has the same distribution as half of the Gaussian free field squared when theta is equal to half. So the first question that I want to address is what is this? So what's the Brownian chaos associated to L theta? And when theta is equal to half, do we recover the hyperbolic cosine of the GFF? So here I'm not aiming for the Liouville measure, because if you want, the hyperbolic cosine of the GFF is just an unsigned version of it. So if I take the square root of the local time, then I just have the absolute value of the GFF, and this is really what we are exponentiating here. And the exponential of the absolute value of the GFF, since it is supported on points where the field is extremely large, this has to be interpreted as the sum of two Liouville measures with opposite sign. Okay, so the first goal is to build this Brownian chaos. So in this whole story, we'll have two parameters, and that's what I wrote here. So theta is the intensity parameter, and A, which is equal to gamma squared over 2, is a thickness parameter. So we'll start by using a cutoff in order to consider finitely many trajectories, because so far I was talking about Brownian chaos for one trajectory, but extending the definition of it to finitely many, this extension is not much harder than defining for only one. So really, what's difficult is to define it for infinitely many, and here we are in this situation where we have too many trajectories. So the way we do our cutoff goes as follows. So okay, so it should not be too important the way we do our cutoff, but here we are doing it in a very specific way, and this is because this cutoff exhibits some exact solvability, and I will come back to this at the end of the talk. So we kill each loop independently of each other at rate k, which is large and positive. And so the probability for a loop to be killed is just, by definition, 1 minus the exponential of minus k times the duration of the loop. And we restrict ourselves to the set of killed loops. So if you want this is the complement of massive loops. And so L theta k approximates very well the whole loop soup when k becomes larger and larger. So now we can define the Brownian chaos associated to this set of killed loops. I denote it MA theta k. So that's this measure here. And our main theorem is that after renormalizing this measure, by log k to the power minus theta and letting k to infinity, we obtain a limiting measure that is non-degenerate. And importantly, when theta is equal to a half, we really recover the hyperbolic cosine of the GFF. And when theta is different, when theta is not equal to a half, we just have a multiplicative chaos associated to a different field, a non-Gaussian field. This is just a new object. Do you have any questions concerning this this result?
So I have
maybe
yeah,
so I just want to clarify that is it true that for a fixed k you only have finite many loops when you
no.
when you define this measure, right?
No. So this guy here, there are this guy, of course, I mean, it has infinitely many loops, but the point is that we have thinned enough our set of loops so that defining an associated chaos, is quite simple. So, for instance, what you can do is you can I don't know, look at the nth largest loops, largest according to diameter, for instance. Define the chaos associated. Define the chaos associated to this guy. So here I will have only finitely many, and then I define my whole chaos here as just being the increasing limit.
So it just so when you are killing loops, are you killing a large loop or you are killing small loops? So,
I'm killing all loops, but so here, if my duration is very large, it will be more unlikely to kill the loop. So the smaller the loops, the more likely it will be to be killed. What am I saying? Or is it the other? No. Okay. So this set L theta k contains less small loops than the original set.
So yeah, so I guess so. What make it more finite? So I feel like once you kill some loops, this measure become more finite, right? Like you don't have to normalize to define
exactly. So that's yes. So that's the whole point. So we don't need to re-normalize it. So what I wanted to say is that if I can define an M a theta k n, for instance. So here n stands for, because I've just selected the n largest loops in my set of killed loops. And what I wanted to say is that this guy converges without normalization towards a non-degenerate measure.
And if you do not have this k, then this will converge. Then the convergence is more non-trivial.
Exactly. So if I don't have this k, then this would just converge to infinity. And without the k, you would need to have a normalization.
Okay. So there are also some questions from the chat. I mean, that question was already answered.
Okay.
Ewan, do you want to ask?
No, I think I'm good for now. You can go ahead.
Okay, good. And so yeah, this parameter a is related to the parameter gamma by a equals gamma squared over 2. And so in this formula, for instance, we see that there is a and gamma. Okay. So this is really about the construction of the measure, and now I want to explain a bit the relationship between this measure and the loop soup itself. So if I pick a point that has been sampled according to the measure, what does my loop soup look like near such a point? So how many loops are actually going through that point? And so what are the respective thicknesses associated to each individual loop? So that was really the initial question that I wanted to answer. And so what we show is that we have infinitely many loops that visit the point. And if I denote AI, the respective thicknesses of each loop that visit the point, then these AIs, so they sum up to this overall thickness parameter A, and they are distributed as a Poisson-Dirichlet distribution, where with intensity theta, and here theta is really with the parameter theta, and here theta is also the intensity of the loop. And conditionally on these thicknesses, then the loops that visit our point Z are independent, and they have the same distribution as the one that we saw before. So we have this Poisson point process of excursions with intensity AI times an excursion measure. We take all these excursions, we concatenate them, and we obtain one loop. So this is really what the loop soup looks like in the vicinity of a thick point. Okay. So now I want to emphasize that the identification of the measure when theta equals a half is actually not a trivial fact. And so the problem here is that Legendre isomorphism. So before that, I was writing it in a bit an informal way, but the way it is really written is like this. So on the right hand side, we have the GFF, and we square the GFF. And so since it is not defined pointwise, we cannot square it. And actually, to square it, we need to recenter it as well. And so that's what these dots are saying on here. And so what we obtain is actually the Vic power, the Vic square of the GFF. And the same is true on the left-hand side. And this is really, if you want, creating a lot of problems because, for instance, it's not even clear that the hyperbolic cosine of the GFF, this is not even clear that it is a measurable function of the Vic square of the GFF. So instead, what we do is that we go through the discrete setting, because in this setting, we don't need to center things at all. And Legendre isomorphism just holds pointwise, as I wrote it before, without centering. But to be able to use the discrete setting, so we need to show that the measure that we constructed before also says something about the discrete. And indeed, we show that it encodes the scaling limit of the set of thick points of a discrete loop soup, so of a random walk loop soup. And in fact, this theorem takes a big part of the article. Finally, I want to finish with some comments about the exact solvability of our model. So as I was explaining, we use a special cutoff with this killing by with this again of massive cutoff. We could have of course used a different one with by, for instance, selecting only the n largest loops, or for instance saying killing all the loops with diameter smaller than epsilon. But this cutoff enjoys some very specific exact solvability that I just want to give you a flavor of this. So recall that MA theta k is the brane chaos, but at the level of the cutoff. And I define this quantity, so Ck of Z, which is just integrating the heat kernel with this killing here. And so the theorem is the following. Okay, so what we show, so there is, if you want, a first equality. So this equality here, I don't really want you to read the whole formula. This is not really the purpose of it. But what I wanted to say is that for any cutoff, we would obtain such a formula like this. So we are looking at the first moment of the measure, and we obtain a kind of semi-explicit formula where we have a very big sum, and then we have convoluted integrals. I mean, we integrate over an n-dimensional simplex, and then we have this product. So this, we would obtain this for basically any approximation. But the magic that we have here is that this complicated expression turns out to have a very explicit form because we are using a special cutoff. And indeed, this is equal to this nicer expression here. So what we have, we just have the conformal reduced to the power a, so gamma squared over 2. And then we have a function f, which is very nice because this function f is expressed in terms of a simple confluent hypergeometric function. And so this was just to give you a hint of the exact solvability that we have with this special cutoff. But it turns out that it's actually a very it's a feature that pops up everywhere in our article. We really obtain in a way exact formula for many different observables, and this is quite important for our analysis. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so I will now stop the recording.